Gracious and loving Father, we come before you this afternoon. We thank you, Lord, for the work that you are doing in sealing the messages. I pray, merciful Savior, that you might give us wisdom and understanding of these truths. Pour out your Spirit upon us and guide us, Lord, in the name of Christ. Amen. Amen. So, 10 past 12, 10 past 1, I'm done. Yeah, the time is no longer. So, just a quick recap of what we covered yesterday. I didn't put some of the stuff on the board. Maybe I should. We looked at how Rome, or the king of the north, always has to conquer how many areas? Three before they rule supreme, right? Pagan Rome has to conquer the east, the pleasant land, and the south, right? Papal Rome, the Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths to begin the 1260. Then we were looking at Daniel 11, and we're seeing that it's a complement. It's complementing verses 40 to 45, and it begins with we're told about a king who was once a prince of the king of the south, and he branches out and he goes to conquer how many areas? He goes to conquer 3 areas, right? He conquers I don't remember the exact order, but I know the north is last. He conquers Seleucus, the east, the west, Cassander, then Lysimachus, the north. Right, in that order. So he has to plant 3 horns. And we saw that the north, Lysimachus, or Lysimachus, however you know. And he did that in 281 BC. So by the time you get to 281, he's basically planted 3 horns, right? And this begins the 35 years. Which takes you to the year 246. And in 246, but before this year, the treaty. In 252. This treaty was at the conclusion of the Second Syrian War. Remember? So there's a treaty. The king of the south enters into the fortress of the king of the north, right? Into the fortress in 246. But then that history, that's what happens there. We saw that it was typifying from when the papacy began to rule, right? Are people following? The papacy had to conquer 3 horns, right? It had to plug 3 horns. It looks like people are not concentrating. The Vandals, the Heruli, and the Ostrogoths to begin the 1260, which ends in 1798. With the king of the south, Napoleon, entering into the fortress. He goes right into the heart of Rome and takes the Pope captive. Pope dies in exile. The king of the north, taken captive, dies in exile. But before this, you had a treaty. 1797. The Treaty of Tolentino. And we saw that this, from 538 to 1798, is prophetically 3.5 years. 3.5. So that's the same number, it's 35. So you have 3.5 prophetic years. Then we went to verse 10. This is just recap. Verse 10, we saw that it's identifying the sons in the plural. Brother Tendai showed us the four kings, right? Who are the two sons that you have here? Reagan and Bush. And Bush who? Bush the Great, right? Reagan. It's key to put that emphasis of Bush the Great for what we want to bring in. And Bush the Great. Because at the time of the end, the greats always bring in a new government. Bush the Great. He's the one who began the Soviet campaign. He began to push. Remember, it says the two sons, but one shall certainly come. So one son began the campaign of retaliating on behalf of his father in verse 10. But he dies without doing that work. But his brother, Antiochus the Great, is the one who certainly came in the overflow and passed over. Right? When verse 40 is fulfilled in Daniel 11:40 in 1989, it tells us that the king of the north shall overflow and pass over. But when that overflowing and passover took place in 1989, Reagan wasn't king anymore, but Bush the Great was king. So Bush the Great has been typified by Antiochus the Great, who finishes the work that his brother began. Right? We see Bush the Great has been typified by Antiochus the Great. Right? Who finishes the work that his brother began. Right? Just like how Seleucus is Reagan, but his brother is Antiochus the Great. Seleucus begins the campaign, Antiochus the Great finishes. Reagan begins the campaign, Bush the Great finishes it. Right? Then we covered verse 11. We skipped. We showed that in 1989 he only comes up to his fortress, right? He doesn't enter into the fortress. And we saw that we gave proof text for the phrase overflow and Passover. We saw that that phrase is in verse 40 and is in verse 10, because verse 10, line upon line, is verse 40. And we went to Isaiah 8:8 and we showed the expression about the king of Assyria, and Assyria is the king of the north. How the king of Assyria was to overflow and pass through even to the neck. And we showed that what's above the neck? The head. And what's the head? Prophetically. It's the capital. And what was the capital of the Soviet Union? Russia. Right? So when he overflows, he only takes the countries, the territory. You find that illustrated in many wars in Daniel 11. You would find a king would take the territory of another king. But that king doesn't cease to be the king as long as the capital city wasn't taken. Right? They would still remain king. You can look at it even in other battles. It's airtight. And then we went to verse 16. It talks about the glorious land. Right? And it lines up with verse 41, the glorious land. Then verse 17 talks about setting his face to enter setting his face to enter. Right? And we saw that the grammatical expression, set your face to enter, is found in Daniel, is identifying when you're entering into where? Egypt. In Daniel 11:42 talks about the conquering of Egypt. So first the glorious land, then Egypt. In verse 16 and 17. Just like in verse 41, a glorious land in Egypt. Right? And then we're told that he shall stumble and fall at the end, right? He shall stumble and fall in verse 19. Right? So this is the fall of the king of the north. Typified in verse 45 when he comes to his end with none and hell. Right? So that's that line. But we show that all these verses are in sequential order. Therefore, if verse 10 is in 1989 and verses 16 to 19 are from the Sunday Road to the close of probation, therefore verse 11 and 15 need to plug in the history between 1989 and the sun and midnight cry. They have to be at those waymarks, because those are the waymarks that are vacant. Now, when we read Daniel 11:11, right, we are told about the king of the south being moved with cola. Right? Let's go to Daniel 11:11. That's what we read from. It says, and the king of the south shall be moved with choler, and shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north. And he shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into his hand. Right? So here we are seeing that after verse 10, which is the 1989, the king of the south is still identified as being active. We're seeing it. Because these verses are sequential. the king of the south is still identified as being active. That's a witness to show you that from 1989, the king of the south is still remaining. Because what was taken is the countries, not the capital, the head. The king of the north only overflew to the neck, not to the head. Therefore, the king of the south is still standing after verse 10. So we were trying to think of a way of where do we place verse Daniel 11:11. And we gave a bit of some proof checks, and then we want other witnesses to support it. And we went to the 1909 General Conference. This was Ellen White's last General Conference. And we saw that the theme of that General Conference was the third angel's message, right? Right? And we were showing that when you get to midnight, this is the arrival of the third angel. And that's the subject, that's their present truth. And we were identifying that at that time there was something that's mentioned about 40. If you put that in place. He pointed out that while in 1901 the executive committee consisted of 13 member states, and now there were 40. So when you get to that General Conference of 1909, there are 40 states, member states of the conference, right? So you can plug the number 40 here, right? You can put the number 40. These are key symbols for us to put all these things in place. You can put the number 40, and I'll give witnesses. And we saw that Ellen White began to speak at the 11th hour, and she spoke for how many times? 11 times. So what do you have there? You have a doubling of 11. So you have 11. And we saw that she was 81. And at that time there were 21. In 1901 there were 2 union conferences, and now there were 21. So when you get to that general conference session, there are 21 union conferences. Right? There are 21 union conferences by the time you get to the 1909 General Conference. So you can put the number 21 there. Today people are a bit distracted. We need progress. Please, don't let the birds snatch. 21. And Ellen White is 81 at that General Conference, right? Yeah. So, and we put we set forth a couple of arguments, and which need more evidence. But we saw that where do you find the first mention of midnight? Exodus 11, right? And in Exodus 11, it's talking about midnight, right? It's a prediction about midnight. Because it's a prediction that's opened before midnight to Moses. And it's open in Exodus 11. Just like how the Lord was opening up a prediction before midnight from the book of Daniel chapter 11. So the number 11 is connected with midnight. Right? It's connected with midnight. And in the life of Christ, when is Christ arrested? At midnight. How many disciples did he still have at that point? 11. Because Judas has just fallen off, right? Judas had just fallen off. So one of the things that this is opening up is the number 11 in connection with this history. And it's also identifying that in this history there's a falling away. Right? Are we seeing it? It's the history where there's a falling away. It's a subject we can't get into. But you can show that when this 7th seal is being opened, there's a falling away. Because when Sister White says that when that light is opened up, some will immediately resist it. That's when you go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 11. It's a verse that talks about many receiving strong delusion. Right? Verse 11, strong delusion. You can run many 11s in the Bible and it ties into this history. So, so those are some of the things that we put in place. Now we want to set forth a couple of arguments as well to solidify from some history and some proof checks. Now, if you go to the notes, after I had spoken about, Daniel 11:11. Historically, this is known as the Battle of Raphia, right? And we're being told about the king of the north. Now, we have a prophetic dilemma. Go to Daniel 11:14. Daniel 11:14. 11:11 is just told us about the king of the south winning. Verse 12 tells us about what he does when he wins. We're going to come back to it. Verse 13, let's start from verse 13. For the king of the north shall return. So after losing to the king of the south in verse 11, right? The king of the north what? He shall return and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, right? So this is talking about now the king of the north raising up a stronger military after losing at the battle of Raphia in Daniel 11:11. And then it says, and shall certainly come after certain years with a great army and with much riches. We're seeing it, huh? Then when you go to verse 14, and in those times, right? In the times when he's just lost, right? And is now building up his military. Do we see? He's just lost and is building his military to retaliate. In those times, there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Who do we say is the king of the south now? Russia. So many shall stand up against who? Russia. And then it says, also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fall. Right? Who are the robbers of thy people? It's Rome, right? We know that basic, right? Because that word robbers there can mean breakers. Right? When you study Daniel chapter 7, it talks about Rome being the fourth beast which breaks in pieces. Right? But it's a power that exalts itself, but it falls. That's one of the characteristics of Rome, the papacy, right? Because when you go to 2 Thessalonians, we are told about the son of perdition, who shall magnify himself, but shall be consumed with the brightness of the Lord's coming. So he falls, right? And when you go in Daniel 11:36, we're told about a king who shall do according to his own will, and shall magnify himself until the indignation be accomplished, right? Until the Lord pours out indignation upon him. So he falls. Daniel 11:40-45 tells us about the papacy coming to his end with none help. So you've got many witnesses that the robbers of thy people are illustrating the work of the papacy. But we're being told about the king of the north, whom we typically understand to be who? Who do we understand to be the king of the north? The papacy. But here we're being told that there's a king of the north, and there's also the robbers of thy people. Is this the same? Contextually, it can't be, right?
Yes.
So, who's the king of the north who's fighting with the king of the south? It has to be the United States, right? One simple argument is this. The United States is the armies of Rome, right? It's the armies of Rome, so you can't separate the United States from Rome. But one of the other prophetic arguments that you can bring in is something that was discussed a while back. I think it was shared with the church. When Ronald Reagan is beginning his campaign against the Soviet Union, right? What does he do with the papacy? He forms an alliance, like a treaty, right? Yeah, but he forms an alliance, isn't it? They form an alliance, they come together, right? This is identifying the United States now committing fornication with the church, with the apostate church, because it's not allowed, right? Church and state. So they're committing fornication. And the papacy is identified as what type of a woman? Adulteress, a harlot, right? And what does Paul say when you join yourself unto an harlot? You become one flesh. So the United States in the Ronald Reagan era joined with the papacy, and they become what? One. They have one mind. So if the papacy is the king of the north, the United States is also who? The king of the north. So when you look at this verse contextually, the king of the north is the United States, but the robbers of thy people is the papacy. You can relate to it at that level. Right? So okay, I should use my notes. Let's go back to the notes. After Daniel 11:11, I'll read it again in our hearing. It says, and the king of the south shall be moved with choler, and he shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north. And he shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into his hand. Right? So the king of the north sets forth a great multitude, but the multitude is given into the hand of the king of the south. Right? You're going to see it contextually when you get to verse 13 as well. Verse 12 then says, and when he hath taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by it. Right? So when the king of the south has taken away many multitudes, his heart is lifted up, right? And he goes and he casts down many 10,000s. So the verse says, let's read verse 11 again, because I want us to put it in place correctly so that people don't go with questions. It says, and the king of the south shall be moved with choler, and shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north. And he shall set forth a great multitude. Who's setting a great multitude? The king of the north. The power mentioned in the previous, what you call it in Acts? The he before, right? And he shall set forth a great multitude. We've been told about the king of the north before. And now it's now repeating and enlarging and telling us, and he, the king of the north, shall set forth a great multitude. But the multitude shall be given into his hand. Right? When you read it, it sounds, but it's obvious, right? Because who's setting forth the great multitude? It's the king of the north, right? He's setting forth the great multitude. So, if he's the one who's setting forth the great multitude, who's the multitude being given into the hand of? It has to be the south, because the north is the one who's setting forth the great multitude. In the context of the verse, right? Right? So, verse 12 then says, and when he hath taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by it. Then I have here an extract from Wikipedia. This is talking about the Battle of Raphia. Daniel 11:11 is identifying the Battle of Raphia, which we are placing at midnight, right? Russia striking the United States at midnight and winning. The United States bringing in a big army and losing. It says the Battle of Raphia, also known as the Battle of Gaza. And Gaza is in Syria, right? It's in Syria. And right now you have a proxy war going on between Russia and the United States and Syria. It's not an accident.
Is it not close to Palestine?
Palestine.
I thought so, on the western side.
On the west, but Raphia is in Syria, right?
No.
It's not. But they call it Syrian wars.
Yes, but because... Okay.
Because of the king of the north being Syrian. Okay.
Because the usual point of contest was that territory called Coal Syria.
Coal Syria.
But Raphia was on the west coast of Palestine.
Okay. So they're fighting for the territory of Syria, of Coal Syria. Generally.
Yeah, but that battle was fought like just by the coast of Palestine on the west.
On the west, okay. But yeah, that's there, right? And then it says the Battle of Raphia, also known as the Battle of Gaza, was a battle fought on June 22, 217, right? So this is the Battle of Raphia, June 22, 217. I have 217 here. Near modern Rafah, between the forces of Ptolemy IV. What does the number 4 represent? Yeah, close occupation, that's true. Fall of a kingdom. So this Ptolemy, this king of the south, is the one who marks what? The end of Russia, because it's the 4th. Right? Remember when I started my presentations, I put some things that we need to have in place. When I was telling you about the number 4, Israel 79. Yeah. Ptolemy IV, Philopator, king and pharaoh of the Ptolemaic Egypt, and Antiochus III, the great of the Seleucid Empire during the Syrian wars. It was one of the largest battles of the Hellenistic kingdoms and was one of the largest battles of the ancient world. The battle was waged to determine the sovereignty of Coal Syria. Right? And then they're going to describe Ptolemy's army, but I'm not going to read all that. Turn over to the next page, to where it says his household cavalry. Yeah, cavalry, right? Yes, cavalry. And then they have some foreign word in there, check how to pronounce it. So his household cavalry numbered 700 men, and local and Libyan horse, another 2,300 men. Do you get it? Mm-hmm. Ptolemy goes to battle, and one of his military regiments is divided into 2,300 men. Can you mark the number 2,300 here? Mm-hmm. That's what we were putting in place yesterday, right? Okay, 2,300 men. He had as appointed general Polycrates of Argos. My thing doesn't have pages, but it's okay. 1, 2, it's page 4, 5. Page 5. Page 5 of my notes. It should be page 5 of yours as well. Right. So yeah, the Battle of Raphia, there's 2,300 men on Ptolemy's side, etc. You can plug the number 2,300 there, because this is the shutdown for the priests, October 22. Right, so airtight. And then I'm going to skip everything else. Go to the part that says, after 5 days of skirmishing, the two kings decided to array their troops for battle. Both placed their phalangites in the center Next to them, they fielded the light-armed and the mercenaries, in front of which they placed their elephants, and even further in the wings their cavalry. Right? They spoke to their soldiers, took their places in their lines, Ptolemy in his left, and Antiochus in his right wing, and the battle commenced. Now I have here left wing south, right wing north. There's something that you see. Like, remember fractals, right? You can see things operating on a global scale, right? But you can also see some of those characteristics repeating in nations and stuff. Like how but Daniel 11 is identifying a global event. But I'm saying you can see some of those characteristics even in local, internal applications. Like the United States, right? It's a two-one power. But it's made up of two parties, right? Two major parties, which are Republicans and Democrats. But when you look at the Republicans, who are the people who control the Republican Party?
The Christians, right?
The Christian right, the Catholics, right? Catholics, evangelicals, Protestants, etc., right? And what do we call those people?
Right wing.
Right-wing politics. And that's the king of the north, because the people who control the Republican Party is the Catholics in the north, right? And the papacy is the king of the north. And we call it right-wing politics. But the Democratic Party, who really controls it? On a large scale. Communists. Obama was a communist, you know. Obama was a communist. Bernie Sanders was running against Trump and them. Was a communist, right? Open, right? Communist, if you type Bernie Sanders and stuff. And even when you look at the American Civil War that happened in the 1860s, right? It was between North and South. And the North was the Democrats, Republicans, and the South was the Democrats. Because the Democrats have got the policy of the king of the South, atheism, and the Republicans have got the policy of the king of the North, evangelical Protestantism. So Ptolemy is taking his south wing. Is that an accident? The left wing. Is that an accident? Antiochus is controlling the right wing. Is that an accident? It can't be, right? It's divine. So moving on. So I put that in place, and you can see that it fits, right? And then I've got here from A.T. Jones. He's going to describe what happened to Ptolemy after he's just one way, what is lifted up, right? So I've got here a quotation from A.T. Jones. Yeah, I didn't take the reference. Page 213 of Great Empires of Bible Prophecy. He says, as soon as the spring of 217 BC opened, Ptolemy Philopator with an army of 75,000 and 73 elephants marched out of Egypt to do the battle with Antiochus, wherever they might meet. Antiochus was also early in the field with 78,000 men and 102 elephants. The battle was fought at Gaza. Antiochus was defeated with a loss of 10,000 killed and 4,000 taken prisoners, upon which he abandoned all his late conquests and with the remains of his army returned to his capital. Those countries which Antiochus had the year before overrun now gladly returned to the protectorate of Philopator. Thus the king of the south was moved with choler, and came forth and fought with the king of the north. And the king of the north set forth a great multitude, but the multitude was given into his hand. This great success caused Philopator to become so elated, he was lifted up, that in honor of himself he made a pompous progress through all the provinces that had been recovered. As he passed through Palestine, he visited Jerusalem. Who's Jerusalem in our time? Adventism. Right? So, after that battle, there's going to be some type of entering into Adventism by Russia. Right? Into Jerusalem. He visited Jerusalem and at the temple offered sacrifices to the God of Israel, making at the same time oblations and bestowing considerable gifts. So this brother goes to the temple, and what does he begin to do? Offer sacrifices. What do you call it when a power surrounds or enters into a temple? Abomination of desolation. And when Christ spoke about the abomination of desolation in Matthew chapter 24, when Sister White comments on it, she says when Celsius besieged Jerusalem, what was it to the Jews? A sign. She says it was a sign. You remember, from those who remember that, we've been grappling, and I think for a while now, about what the sign is at midnight. Remember, we've been trying to, what's the sign? Now we are seeing that part of the sign is this abomination of desolation by Russia after winning at midnight. Right? But not content with this, he attempted to force his way into the temple itself. But the abomination of desolation, you don't really just need to enter into the temple. Christ says, when Jerusalem shall be encompassed with armies, that qualifies for the abomination of desolation. So he enters into the sacred precincts in this manner because he's there offering. I think that's in the courtyard, right? He's offering oblation. So it's the abomination of desolation. But not content with this, he attempted to force his way into the temple itself. But suddenly, as in the like instance of Uzziah, king of Judah, he was smitten from God with such a terror and confusion of mind that he was carried out of the place in a manner half dead. On this he departed from Jerusalem, filled with great wrath against the whole nation of the Jews for that which happened to him in that place, inventing many threatenings against them for it. On his return to Alexandria, Philopator resolved to be revenged upon the Jews who dwelt there. So these are the Jews in Alexandria. And Alexandria was the capital of where? Egypt. So these are the Jews in where? Egypt. Who's Egypt right now? Huh? Russia, because Egypt is the king of the south. So these are the Jews where? In Russia. So what's going to, there's something that's going to happen to the Adventists where? In Russia. Okay? And we already know that Putin is restricting religious liberty. Right? Right. Therefore, his repulse and disgrace at the temple in Jerusalem. Accordingly, he published a decree. So there's a decree, right? And what's the sign? According to the Bible and Sister White, what's the sign? It's the abomination of desolation, but what is it as well? It's the seal, right? The sign is the seal. Do we know that? What's the work of the third angel? To seal and bind. When does the third angel arrive for us? At midnight, so there's a sealing at midnight. But the sign is the seal. That's what the Bible says. Remember, we receive the seal of God. Because the Sabbath is the sign of God, right? It's the sign of true sanctification. So there's a sign. And that sign is what marks the arrival of the seal of God for the priests. They are permanently sealed, right? They have to be sealed by serving into the truth before. But there's a decree. And when the decree goes forth, Sister White says what? The stamp is impressed. And we're seeing here Ptolemy passes a decree. So we know there's some type of a decree at midnight. Close occupation for us. Huh? Yes. And then it says, published a decree in 216 BC, that none should be allowed to enter the palace gates who did not sacrifice to the gods there. There were 3 ranks of people of the inhabitants of Alexandria, and by both Alexander the Great and the first of the Ptolemies, the Jews there were enrolled in the first rank. Philopator decreed that they should be all reduced to the third or lowest rank. Right? See, there's something going on. This required them to be enrolled anew, and he decreed that when they presented themselves for enrollment, they should have the badge of Bacchus and ivy leaf impressed. And how you do that, you take a hot iron and smear it on your forehead. So there's a marking. There's some type of a branding, a marking, right? Whilst people are sealed here, there's some type of a marking as well. Remember that you have these 2 contending principles, right? So you already know that's airtight. Now I have here Psalm 74 verse 3. Lift up thy feet unto the perpetual desolations, even all that the enemy hath done wickedly in the sanctuary. Will Ptolemy do something wickedly in the sanctuary at midnight? He will, right? But I'm contending that this Ptolemy is Putin. And we're going to give witnesses that show that. I don't think it's any other Russian president that's going to come. I think it's Putin. Vladimir Putin. And that's what we're getting. Lift up thy feet unto the perpetual desolations, even all that the enemy hath done wickedly in the sanctuary. So here, the psalm is just talking about the enemy. Whatever enemy, whether it's Babylon, north, south, west, east, but an enemy doing something wickedly in the sanctuary. Thine enemies roar in the midst of thy congregations. What's a congregation? It can be a church, right? Mm-hmm. They set up their ensigns for signs. So he enters into the temple, the church, right? And he sets up an ensign for signs. So there's a sign there marked, but it's signs in the plural because there are many things that go on at midnight, but there's a sign, right? O God, how long shall the adversary reproach, and the enemy blaspheme thy name forever? So there's that question now. Question, how long? For those who have done the study in Psalm 74, you know that it's a second witness to Daniel chapter 8. Right? So whatever takes place at midnight is connected to Daniel chapter 8. Do you follow? Psalm 74, when you do the study, Psalm 74 talks about a continual desolation. Daniel talks about the daily, which is the continual. Daniel says, "O Lord, how long shall be this desecration and this desolation?" Psalm says, "Yeah, O Lord, how long shall these adversaries do it?" So they're the same line of thought. Now I have the Daniel 8:13. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, "How long?" Same expression in Psalm 74. So you need to relate them together. "How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice?" But we know that the daily is a desolating power, pagan desolating power, right? "And the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot." So there's a treading underfoot of the sanctuary that's happening at midnight. The sanctuary and the host are being trodden. Then I have the Daniel 11:11. I've put in boldface the expression, "The king of the south shall be moved with choler." You see that in bold, eh? He shall be moved with choler. Daniel 11:11. Then I have there in boldface, "His heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by it." So there are key expressions. Moved with choler, heart being lifted up. Do you see? And you only find that expression, moved with choler, in two passages. In Daniel 11 and Daniel 8. So it's 8:11, right? That's where you find that. So those are the only two places that you find those. So you have to relate to them as the same line of thought. Right? It's going to be expressed differently in Daniel 8, but in Daniel 11 we're being told that it's the king of the south. But let's run the phrase "moved with choler" and read it in Daniel 8. It says this, Daniel 8 verse 7, there in the notes. Daniel 8 verse 7. In the notes, yeah. No one's lost, right? Oh, right. "And I saw him," this is talking about the he-goat with the notable horn, right? And this passage is saying, "I saw him," the he-goat, "come close to the ram, and he was moved with choler against him." Who's the ram in our time? Middle Persia, right? So there's a he-goat that's coming against the USA. And this he-goat is moved with choler. And he's going to tell us something. "And he smote the ram and brake his two horns." What do the two horns of the United States represent? Republicanism and Protestantism. So it says these are the foundation of civil and religious liberty. So when this ram comes and is moved with choler and smites when this he-goat smites the ram, what's going to be broken? The two horns, which are Republicanism and Protestantism, but civil and religious liberty. There's going to be a constitutional breach when this takes place. Right? Let's read on. "And there was no power in the ram." This is why it actually says our power is in the Constitution. "To stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand." Then Daniel 8:8. Daniel 8:8. W. "Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong," that's another key phrase, "when he was strong." When he was strong. So we are told that this ram is moved with choler, which means anger, but it means something else that we're going to look at. But it's also lifted up. So we have three characteristics, right? Lifted up, moved with choler, when he was strong. Keep the "when he was strong" in the back of your mind. "Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And for it came four notable ones towards the four winds of heaven." So when this he-goat falls, it has a fourfold fall, right? It's broken. The number 4 represents what? It represents the end of the kingdom. But we're going to relate to this fourfold breaking in another way. But when this he-goat breaks, there are four ones that come up for it, meaning in its place. The notable one is broken, then four ones come up. which is key to identify. Then I have here Daniel 11:3. And the mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and shall be divided, which means split into two. I have then the bold. Towards the four winds of heaven, right? Into four parts, right? Four winds of heaven, and not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up even for others besides those. Now, I think I know the reason why I put that in there, because I'm emphasizing the dividing into two. But when you go to 2 Chronicles 26 verse 16, it's talking about Uzziah, king of Judah. And Judah is where geographically? In the south. So you ought to relate to Uzziah, king of Judah, as the king of the south. And it says, but when he was strong, his heart was lifted up. His heart was lifted up, right? Who the expression that we read when he was strong was relating to who? The he-goat. So, he-goat. And I think I have it there. Just go to the bottom of your notes where it says Daniel 8:21. It says, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. We'll come back to that. But I want you to see that the he-goat in Daniel 8 is Greece, right? It's Greece. So Greece is the he-goat. But Greece is identified as being a power that's moved with kola and being lifted up, which are the same characteristics that I used to describe king of the south in Daniel 11:11. The king of the south in Daniel 11:11 is moved with kola and is lifted up. Therefore, Greece is the king of the south. Do we see? Contextually, they're interchangeable symbols, right? I just want us to see from the grammar, the connection, right? And then the second witness that we're given for that is 2 Chronicles 26. It's identifying Uzziah as being the king of the south, right? Because he's the king of Judah. But we are being told that when he was strong, Uzziah, his heart was lifted up. So here you see the expression when he was strong and being lifted up, being doubled. Because when he was strong is identifying the he-goat, now it's identifying Uzziah, king of Judah. So you're seeing that the he-goat is the king of the south, which is called Greece. Are we following? Greece is the king of the south, they're interchangeable symbols. One simple argument is this. When Alexander the Great's kingdom was divided into four, did the Greek kingdom cease to exist? Yeah, it was still Greece, right? It was still Greece. And it says in the latter time of their kingdom, of their Greek kingdom, shall the king of fierce countenance stand. But that Greek kingdom was divided into four parts. And Egypt was controlling the southern part of Greece. So at that level, Egypt is Greece. Right? At that level. But the grammatical connection is made within these two verses. Now, let's go to what... So, Daniel 11:11 is being given a second witness in Daniel 8 and 2 Chronicles 26. Both those passages are identifying what takes place at Raphia and after. And it says, when he was strong, his heart was lifted up, Uzziah, to his destruction, for he transgressed against the Lord his God, and went into the temple of the Lord. What's that? Abomination of desolation. So the abomination of desolation is being given a second witness here. The king of the south / Greece gets lifted up and goes into the temple of God. We see that. Abomination of desolation, midnight. To burn incense upon the altar of incense. And Azariah the priest, so you have one priest, Azariah. And with him 80 priests. What's 80. But Azariah is also a priest, right? So how many priests do we have? 81 priests, right? So it's taking you there to midnight. Right? Yes. And then that were valiant men. And they withstood Uzziah the king, and said unto him, it appertaineth not unto thee, Uzziah, to burn incense unto the Lord, but to the sons of Aaron, that are consecrated to burn incense, go out of the sanctuary. So he's in the temple. For thou hast trespassed, neither shall this be for thine honor from the Lord God. Then Uzziah was wroth, so he's angry. Just like what happens to Ptolemy when he's smitten by the Lord, when he's trying to enter into the temple. And he gets angry and he goes and murders Jews. Right? And he had a censer in his hand. It's nice, he had a censer. Right? And to burn incense. one of Ishmael's sons, his name means incense. Ishmael. And right now, Ishmael is who? Who's Ishmael in the Bible? Who does he typify? Islam, right? And is Russia sympathizing with Islam right now? Right? Uzziah is going to be holding the incense in his hand. Right? Because one of Ishmael's sons' names means incense. Right? To burn incense. And while he was wroth with the priest, the leprosy rose even upon his forehead before the priest in the house of the Lord from beside the altar of incense. So what you're having a marking at midnight. Just like how Ptolemy goes and puts a brand on the foreheads of the people at midnight. Airtight, right? It fits there. Then I've got there Daniel 5:1. There's a passage that I don't have there from Daniel 5. When Daniel is telling Belshazzar, okay, let's look at what Belshazzar did. Then we're going to look at Daniel's response. Okay, Daniel 5:1. Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine before the 1,000. Belshazzar, whilst he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels, which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem. When Nebuchadnezzar is entering into the temple, what is that? It's the abomination of desolation. Therefore, Belshazzar is taking those same vessels, which were taken from the temple. That means he's participating in the abomination of desolation, which is the abomination of desolation, right? Remember, Paul talks about not only are they guilty who commit these sins, but those who sympathize with them. That's what Paul says. You are held accountable of being in that sin. So it's the abomination of desolation. That the king and his princes and his wives and his concubines might drink therein. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which is at Jerusalem. And the king and his princes, his wives and his concubines drank in them. Daniel 5:5. Daniel 5:5 is a doubling, right? Here at midnight, you've got a separation of the 5 wise and the 5 foolish. So Daniel 5:5 says, in the same hour, it's in the hour because fear God is the first step, right? Give him glory second. What's our third step? For the hour of his judgment, midnight, right? That's when we judge, right? So in the same hour. Yes. Came forth fingers of a man's hand and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, and the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. So you've got the finger of God there, right? It's the finger of God that's writing. So you can mark the finger of God at midnight, right? You can mark it at midnight. And Daniel then goes to Belshazzar and says, thou king, your heart has been lifted up. So when Belshazzar's heart gets lifted up, he goes and takes the sacred vessels from the temple. Just like what Ptolemy did, right? So this is giving you the characteristics of the king. When the king gets lifted up, they set up the abomination of desolation. It's the second witness, right? And there's the finger of God marked there. So I want to put the finger of God. I pray that I can believe it. Those who were following some presentations last year, the finger of God was one of the things that were being grappled with. But I'm going to try and give some simple witnesses. Exodus 31, verse 18. And he gave unto Moses, the Lord, when he had made an end of communing with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tables of the testimony, tables of stone, written with the finger of God. So how did the Lord write the law? With the finger of God, right? So the law is connected with the finger of God. And Paul tells us in, James tells us that what's the Lord going to use to judge us? The law of liberty, the law. So the law is connected with judgment. And this is the judgment step for the priest. Because judgment is the third step, right? Fear God, first step. Give him glory, second. For the hour of his judgment, third. And judgment is connected with the finger of God. So you can put the finger of God right there, perfectly, right? Now in Revelation chapter 11, when the temple is open, what do the people see? The Ark of the Testament. And what's in the Ark of the Testament? The law. How did the Lord write the law? With this finger, the finger of God. And when is the temple open for the priests? At midnight. So you can mark the finger of God there at midnight. Because Revelation 11 is talking about October 22, isn't it?
Yes.
And October 22, the temple is open. And it typifies midnight for us. So, yes. Then I have a quotation from Ministry of Healing, page 67, paragraph 1. Of all the diseases that were known in the East, the leprosy was the most dreadful. It's incurable. What does Uzziah receive on his forehead? Leprosy, right? Its incurable and contagious character and its horrible effect upon its victims filled the bravest with fear. Among the Jews, it was regarded as a judgment on account of sin, and hence they called it the stroke, the finger of God. So what do they call leprosy? The finger of God. Because it's a ministry of healing, therefore it's inspired. Right? It's there. Deep-rooted and ineradicable, deadly, and it was looked upon as a symbol of sin. Right? The symbol of sin, you have a mark, symbol of sin, the finger of God. Then the next quotation says, away from his friends and his kindred, the leper must bear the curse of this malady. He was obliged to publish his own calamity, to rend his garments and sound the alarm, warning all to flee from its contaminating presence. The cry, unclean, unclean, what's that? Doubling, coming from the mournful tones from the lonely exile, was a signal heard with fear and abhorrence. So when the leper is coming, who has been touched by the finger of God, he cries, unclean, unclean. Can you mark it doubling here? Yes. Daniel 11:11, unclean, unclean. Jesus comes at midnight and kisses Christ and says, Master, Master. Right, so there. And Daniel 8:21, the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. So if we're relating to Greece as Russia, we are, right? We gave those witnesses, right? When does Russia become the king of the south? When I did verse 40, that's one of the things I put in place. Bolshevik revolution, right? When Russia adopts a communist, atheist constitution, right? And who was the first king? Vladimir Lenin. Jesus illustrates the what? End with the beginning. So if the rough goat is the first king, it's typifying the last king. Therefore, the first name of the last king has to be who? Vladimir Putin. So this notable one is Vladimir Putin, the king of Grecia, the king of the south. He's what? There at midnight. I'm convinced. He's there at midnight, right? Then I have there, yes, I have there, the Soviet Union had its roots in the October Revolution of 1917 when the Bolsheviks, headed by Vladimir Lenin. So it's giving you a witness that Lenin was the first king, right? And in this time there was a civil war, right? When Vladimir Lenin came, the kingdom was divided into two parts, the Reds and the Whites, I think, and they were engaged in a civil war. So I'm convinced that when you get to the Battle of Rafia, in the time of Vladimir Putin, there will be a civil war. Because immediately after Ptolemy wins at the Battle of Rafia, if you read this quotation, I want to just try and leave this in a place where we can pick it up. Ptolemy's victory preserved his control over Coal Syria after Rafia. And the weak king declined to advance further into Antiochus' empire, even to retake the Seleucia Peria. The Ptolemaic kingdom would continue to weaken over the following years, suffering from economic problems and rebellion. Nationalist sentiment had developed among the native Egyptians, who had fought at Rafia. Confident and well-trained, they broke from Ptolemy in what is known as the Egyptian Revolt, right? Establishing their own kingdom. They established a kingdom called Upper Egypt. So you had a Lower and an Upper Egypt. Kingdom was divided into two. So it's identifying there was civil war going on at that time. After Ptolemy won at Rafia. So I'm convinced that after the Battle of Rafia, Russia wins civil war. Right? So in 2 Chronicles 26 verse 3, 16 years old was Uzziah when he began to reign. And Uzziah is the king of what? The south, right? He's the king of the south. They've been looking at Uzziah. He reigned for 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was called Jecoliah of Jerusalem. Now I'm going to give two verses, then I'm going to just say something, then we close. In Daniel chapter 2, Greece is illustrated as a kingdom that's to do what? What type of a kingdom is Greece in Daniel chapter 2? Which is to bear rule over all the earth, right? Which is to bear rule over what? All the earth. I think I'll take that up in the next presentation. But in closing, who knows when Vladimir Putin was born? Okay, Uzziah, king of the south, he dies how old? 52. I'm marking it here and I'll explain why. Because the death of a king marks the end of the kingdom. But when was Putin born? 1952. 1952. So this is just like, I just put little witnesses because of time. But we want to pick it up from there, right? And Lord willing, we're going to get into the New World Order in connection with this, right? So we pray. Gracious and loving Father, we thank you for the work that you're doing in unsealing your word and for giving us such strong prophetic evidence to strengthen our faith, Lord, to know that these are the footsteps of the approaching Savior. Lord, we ask for the grace and we need to employ our own diligent efforts to gain a control over our own characters. Sin usually gains the ascendancy, but we need not do it. We need your forgiveness, Lord. Help us. These are solemn truths. You're finishing the work clearly, and you're identifying more and more closely the individuals connected with the close of our probation, that we might not be deceived. I praise you, Lord, that you're opening up the truth about Donald Trump, at the same time that you're opening up the truth about Vladimir Lenin, and how this impacts our salvation. So I thank you, Lord, for being so gracious, because the Lord will do nothing surely until he reveals it through his servants, the prophets. So I thank you, Lord, be with us now as we break for lunch. Help us resume and partake of the next section. In Christ's mighty name, amen.
Amen.